When Kyle Shanahan took over the Niners, they had 2 bad years. Then they went to the Super Bowl. Then they had a bad year. And then in his 5th year, the 49ers started 3-5.
Mm-hmm. Lost to the Colts in
They
the
actually
rain.
started 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
And so that year, they turned it around. They made the playoffs, and they got to the NFC Championship game. So at that point, Kyle Shanahan's been to the postseason 2 out of his 4 years. I'm sorry, 2 out of 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But they're coming off a playoff season, and so he got stability, obviously. Not that he was going to get fired one way or the other, but he makes the playoffs last year, or 2 years ago. Then he follows it up with another NFC Championship game. And so now he's essentially a made man. He's been here 6 years. He's been to the postseason. He's been to the playoffs 3 years. All 3 of those years, they went to at least the NFC Championship. And now it's 3 out of the last 4 years they've been to the NFC Championship. So he's a made man right now. He's solidified. He could endure a couple bad years if injuries hit, and he's fine, right? Kyle Shanahan is as rock solid, entrenched as a head coach as possible, right?
You called Pat Riley a Don a couple months ago. I'll give that to that. That's where he's at. He's a Don.
So I think we can all agree Kyle Shanahan is
safe.
Very, very safe.
All right.
But the thing I always think about is just how fickle it is. What if they hadn't turned around the year 2 years ago?
Oh, my gosh.
Like the difference between Shanahan making the playoffs 1 out of 5 years is so much different to me than making it 2 out of 5 with one of the years being the year in the present.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then he makes it to the NFC. He's fine. We all know that he's fine. Let's go to Farhan and Kapler. Farhan's been here one more year than Kapler. Anyway, Farhan gets here. It's lose-lose. They lose 2 years.
Pandemic season 2.
Then they win 107 games. Then last year they were 500, and they make a big run late to get to 500. And now they're in the middle of the wild card race. So what I'm getting at here, Goo, is what's the difference? Not for us, the fans,
okay,
but for Farhan and Kapler between making the playoffs and missing the playoffs this year. Because this is exactly what I mean. If the Giants, let's just say they fade. There's a lot of teams. There's a lot of teams still in the race.
Yep.
Let's say the Giants finish 84 and 78, but they don't make the playoffs. Well, now Farhan's been here 5 years. They've been to the postseason once. And if you really want to be a negative Nancy, you could say that year was an outlier, too. They won 107 games. I mean, that was a fluke. So the difference between the Giants not making the postseason this year and making it, to me, is dramatic in terms of how, let's say, safe or hot the seat gets. So what I'm asking is, how big of a difference is it for the Giants making the playoffs and not making the playoffs for Farhan and Kapler, or do you separate Farhan and Kapler? Because I do think if the Giants make the postseason this year and they do it with some of their young players, I think Farhan and Kapler then kind of cross a threshold in which they're in pretty good shape. But if they don't make the postseason this year, are they on the hot seat? Should they be on the hot seat? Is it fair to look at Farhan and say, dude, they made the one time in 5 years under Farhan, we made the playoffs. I was listening to Willard yesterday. He had some really good points about, he said, do you trust Farhan Zaidi? And I was thinking in my car, I trust Farhan. And Dibbs was saying, I trust Farhan, but he was disappointed at the trade deadline. Okay, fine. And we talk about the Giants system that they've set up, and they have a way to do things. And I agree with that. And Willard says it's kind of proven. But what if they don't make the playoffs this year? 1 in 5 years it'll be with Farhan. Will that be okay? And then Kapler will have 1 playoff appearance in 4 years. Is it okay because they're going kind of young this year? How do you view what happens this year, Guru, with the Giants in terms of the futures of Farhan Zaidi and Gabe Kapler?
I mean, you said a lot there, and the one word that stood out to me is the anomaly. And if somehow they can punch the ticket and get in, then last year looks like the outlier. You got the momentum from the 107-win season. Okay, you were 500. It felt like you were 15 under last year. And then you follow that up with a mixture and infusion of youngsters like we're seeing with Matos, Bailey, Casey Schmidt, who's still a question mark with the bat. But, Steiny, if you can punch that ticket, then I think they got 3 more years you could say 4, because you got some, that infusion that I just mentioned. And I'm gonna put the right on the table early, brought to you by Atco Pest Control. Visit Atco Pest Control for all your pest control needs. Steiny, the big thing is this would be kind of, I'm going to go here. I'm not trying to upset you early, but, man, this would be like a meltdown if somehow they don't make it. I think they'd have to play bad baseball. They've been in this position. They've had their worst stretch on this last road trip. They've come back. They took 2 out of 3 from a good Boston Red Sox team, and now you can win the series today against Arizona. I just feel like the momentum of not qualifying for the wild card this season, for me, would leave a bad taste in my mouth. Then you can double back and say, well, damn, what could have been done different? Maybe Farhan could have been aggressive at the trading deadline. I'm giving Farhan, Steiny, I don't know if you know, I kind of mentioned it to you, I whispered it to you. I'm giving him a pass. I don't feel like there was much out there, but the fact that you got Haniger lurking out there, Yaz, and who's our other guy that's out? Estrada coming back. I'm like, okay, I feel that, and you got some synergy going. Okay, let's ride with that. But to not make it and punch that ticket this year, Steiny, I think the furnace would be turned up. Now, in reality, will it be from the Giants front office? I doubt it, but that's how much I am focused and invested in for Giant fans to kind of just qualify for the offs, and you will have done good. You didn't give up anything in the farm for a rental, and you're in it. You made it.
Well, it feels to me, and this is where I'm maybe I'm wrong. It feels to me like right now, like you said, what if the Giants fade?
Oh, man.
Well, they don't necessarily have to fade. The Phillies are a half game behind the Giants. I'm sorry, they're a game and a half behind the Giants. Miami's a game and a half behind the Giants. Milwaukee's a game and a half behind the Giants.
Cubs.
Arizona's 3 games, just 3 games in back of the Giants. And the Cubbies are 4.5. Even San Diego's starting to knock on the door 5 or 6 back.
Playing good ball.
What I'm saying is 2 or 3 of those teams get hot.
But you would have to get cold, though. You would have to go cold.
Not necessarily.
Then if we're doing the Steiny math, let's just say they didn't make it. That would be 1 playoff appearance in the last 3 years. So how would you look at that?
It would be 1 playoff appearance in the last 5 years if they don't make it this year. And overall, it'd be 1 playoff appearance in the last 7 years.
See, I'm kind of giving them a mulligan for the first 2. And that shortened with the pandemic season. So I'm kind of, was 107 real? And no. I know, hey, Guru, that's over. That's done. But for the 107 equated to a playoff berth. And if you can follow this year with a playoff berth after only going 500 last year, Steiny, I think everything's good. And we're seeing some youngsters play and participate.
Right.
So I think everything's fine.
But what I'm saying is, let's say they finish, right now they're 60 and 49. So let's say theoretically,
11 over. That's
what
incredible.
If they finish 85, which would be 25 wins?
Do they get in?
77, 59, 69. They could, what if they finish 25 and 28? They finish 85 and 77 and don't make the postseason.
Then I think it's fair for fans or anybody out there to say, okay, did Farhan make the right move by not being that aggressive at the deadline? Because I would say we were right. We were 11 games over. We were the number one wild card with umpteen games to go, and we went 25-28 with some youngsters. And maybe that one of the youngsters could have been parlayed into a veteran. I don't know. Maybe if you went all in for a Verlander or a Scherzer. I those thoughts cross my mind. You look at Logan Webb last night, and if you had one more of him, Steiny, what would this team be?